This is what happens when I give the film crew the day off. Anyway, good morning. And welcome to St. Paul's Universalist Church. It's good to be back with you after a brief hiatus. I was, 2 weeks ago in Barneveld, last week in Boston. So your minister's been making the rounds. But it is always good to be in your company, and thanks for coming out as Old Man Winter reasserted himself over the last week and appears to be ready for an encore performance as the week goes on, according to the forecast at least. In the way of announcements, I have only one up here. The newsletter is ready. It's in the back on the table. If you take one, there's a little sign-up sheet next to it. Please just sign your name, and that way Pat knows who to mail copies to and who to not mail copies to. Are there any other announcements that anyone would like to share with the congregation?
Just that Dennis Fisher did pass away Thursday.
Dennis Fisher passed away? Oh. I'm sorry to hear about that, Leah. That's rough. That's rough. Any other announcements? All right, let us proceed to our choir call to worship.
We will turn our swords into plowshares. We will break the chains that bind. We will pray for peace everywhere. A house of prayer, of love and love.
I open our service this morning with the words of Robin Sharma. Remember, we see the world not as it is, but as we are. Most of us see through the eyes of our fears or our limiting beliefs and our false assumptions. I welcome you to our Sunday service, this opportunity to come together on our shared spiritual journeys. We come from all the places of our separate lives to this hour, from love and grief, hope and worry, solitude and activity, to seek renewal and to find celebration, lifting a cloud of daily concerns, pleasures, and pains. We pause to give thanks, to feel wonder, and to experience the privilege of living. It's going to be one of those days. Anyway, please join me in the words as we light our chalice. May this flame, symbol of transformation since time began, fire our curiosity, strengthen our wills, and sustain our courage. And our opening song is number 347. Please remain standing and join me in the words of affirmation. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest of truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with one another and with our God. You know how you have that thing where you're like pulling out of the driveway and you're thinking, did I turn the iron on? It occurred to me that, Mark and I had coordinated, I was gonna nod, and, I'm sitting up here thinking, did I actually check if I hit the record button? I did, so I'm glad people particularly enjoyed that, and people at home will get to enjoy it as well. Anyway, we are at the time where we share joys, sorrows, and concerns. I certainly encourage people in our post-COVID era to come up if you would like and do so. I may repeat what you say just because I'm mic'd up, but
I just wanted to add one thing to that.
Okay.
See if I pull it off. I don't know if you know, who did know Dennis Fisher, but one of his beautiful qualities, on top of all the disabilities that he had, was that he would always tell you a joke. And two days, as long as he could talk, every day he would leave me with a joke. And I'm terrible at telling jokes. But I'm going to share this one because I think it's beautiful for a last joke compared to the words I heard some other schmuck over on the news say. But he said we all should study geology, and that way we don't take things for granted. You get it? Granite. I always had to repeat it twice.
no, that's good. I have a class that one of my classes I've gotten so bad with the dad jokes that like I walk in and they're like, "Give us the dad joke, Mr. Franks."
Yeah. Very well, just do that.
This is a candle of thanks and appreciation. 48 years ago, Mary started the co-op, and she's run the day-to-day operation for 48 years until she retired on Friday. Congratulations.
This is a candle of thanks. My daughter and her grandchildren and her daughter were in the Destiny Mall when that shooting took place in Syracuse. And they had to go into, into a closet. They were at a nail salon. The little ones wanted to get their nails done, of course. And they took refuge in a closet of the nail salon. It was my daughter. There were 7 of them in there, including a 4-month-old infant. And they were okay, but thanks be, he just shot at a garbage can. Her fiance was at the other end of the mall, near where the shooting was. Of course, they all have cell phones, and he notified them he was okay. However, she had the kids all turn their cell phones off, or the sound off, and they sat in there in the closet. And my one granddaughter is deeply affected by it, the mommy of the baby, but they're okay. So it's a prayer of thanks.
A little too close to home.
This is a candle of joy. I'm celebrating 33 years with my company. I've worked all over. I've worked Rome, 2 offices in Utica, Troy, Syracuse, Albany. And since the pandemic hit, I've been working from home for 3 years and enjoying it. So I started, it was 9X. We merged with part of AT&T, became Bell Atlantic, merged with GTE, MCI, Verizon now. Now it's Verizon. maybe another couple years. I've survived many cutbacks, layoffs, downsizing, and maybe another couple years.
This is a combination of joy and concern. I have twin 17-year-old granddaughters, and the joy is that they have been applying to colleges and gotten accepted at the ones that they want. The concern is that one of them just got her driver's license. So be advised if you're in northern New Jersey.
Missed birthday parties, it's just I can't retract the whip today. I may have mentioned a few weeks ago, but back then it seemed like it was way in the future, but tomorrow, my son Mac, and Dawn's son Mac, our son Mac, will go to a mixer, interview, whatnot, because he's been chosen as a potential doctoral candidate at Boston University, which, given he's only been there a semester and a quarter, is no small feat. He's really, I always knew that boy, if he really wanted something, he could do it. Cleaning up the playroom was not something that he really wanted. No, but anyway, we went to see him last week, and it's looking good. You know, I mean, you never know, but you know, it'll be weird to potentially have a doctor in the family. So that's for Mac. And then this last one, I have it all written down. So, the results of a recent vote by the congregation to fix the leak in the pipes and take on the project of a second restroom has been completed with a grand reopening. You may have noticed. I tested the facilities myself this morning. It's very impressive. Biggest of thanks go out to Steve Smith and his partner in crime. I won't ask how we paid for some of these things. Rod Nichols, who wondered how Steve got him involved in this project. All kidding aside, Steve and Rod put in countless hours working on the restroom, buying supplies, and trips to unload the construction debris. The old restroom had to be completely gutted and redesigned, as well as fix the leak of an ancient old pipe. So a little archaeology there, right, Mr. Smith? All right, great. The result is a state-of-the-art, beautiful restroom. They also painted the bottom half and baseboard of the fellowship hall. Special thanks also to Mike Evans for constructing and securing the grab bar to complete the project. Also thanks to Marty and Pat Rabowski for fixing the window, putting together the cabinet, painting the table, which was donated by Steve and Julie, and cleaning and adding a few final touches to complete the project. We are so thankful to Steve and Rod for a job well done. A reminder to you all, the light and fan for the new bathroom is on the right side of the wall in the hallway and should be turned off after you leave. The bathroom on the right is automatic and should not be turned off. So left, turn it off, right, it'll turn itself off. And please remember, when visiting the new bathroom, to remain seated during the entire performance. And as always, light a final candle, any joys, sorrows, or concerns that go unspoken but remain in our hearts and minds. We will now give and receive the morning offering to support the work, the wonder, and the witness of this community.
Jeff,
Yes?
since you had a small audience, do you mind if I share something?
Sure.
Thanks. There aren't too many actors here this morning, so I thought I'd come up and share.
Okay.
morning, I was sitting over at Stewart's, my usual position, and a friend of mine came up yesterday afternoon. You may not recognize his name, but his name was Gary Gorka, a longtime friend of mine. And back in the day, my father pulled a fiberglass trailer up from Florida, and it was in my brother's driveway, and I sold it to Gary Gagorka, who said he never paid me for it. So I'm sitting at Stewart's, and I had trouble with my Social Security. The Social Services confiscated my funds. It has been kind of tough, but to make a long story shorter, Gary Gagorka came in. He said, "Kevin, you know I never paid you for that fiberglass camper." And Steve Caspero, Steve Caspero, another local contractor, bought the trailer from Gary and decided to pay him for it. So I'm sitting there at Stewart's, and Gary comes in with an envelope with cash for what he said he didn't pay me for, but I don't even remember it. But it just reminds me of how the old Beatles songs, when you find yourself in the thick of it, help yourself to a bit of what is around you. And what goes around comes around if you live long enough to receive it. And that's it. Thanks.
We will now give and receive the morning offering. I invite you to join me in a time of prayerful meditation. These are the words of Amy Johnson. Loving Creator, beyond our understanding, yet closer than our own breath, breathe into us your love, so that we may love ourselves and others as you do. Help to heal the fear, hate, and judgment that wound so many. Help us to know deeply and certainly that your love transcends all labels, all categories, all words. Your love is. Your love rains down on us all. Everyone is invited to your table. We each bring our whole and broken parts and come together in your love, which binds us and heals us all. Amen. Let Let's now share a moment of silence where we listen to the wisdom of our hearts and minds. Our next song is number 323.
Break up the circle in living love, where people grow forgiving and forgiving. Break up the circle, make it wider still, till it includes, embraces all the living. Come wander at His love that comes to life, where words of freedom are with humor spoken, and people keep no score of wrong or guilt, but will our human bonds remain unbroken. Come then, the movement of a love that frees, till people of whatever race or nation will truly be themselves and on their faith. See on to wine with laughter and elation.
Today's reflection is a combination of psychology, spirituality, and some practical advice for living. One of the most important lessons in life is learning how to relate to others and how to get along with them. Indeed, the success of the human race over the centuries is due not only to our intelligence or our resilience, but our ability to work cooperatively with one another. As a counselor, I have spent much of the past 30 years helping young people to learn these skills with varying degrees of success. But how well do we really know others? Chances are, it's probably not as well as we think. And our lack of understanding can result in hurt feelings and resentments. A large part of this is the result of making assumptions about others that are inaccurate. In the late 1950s, a social psychologist by the name of Fritz Heider described this phenomenon, studied it in scientific terms. He called it attribution theory. And it basically addressed how individuals relate to and make sense of the social world around them. Specifically, attribution theory is concerned with how people perceive events around them and how their perceptions in turn affect their thinking and their behavior. We are doing this all the time in our social dealings. So much so that it is hard to imagine that what the world would look like without those perceptions. I mean, we can't function if we can't perceive what's going on, right? Or perhaps it would be more accurate to call them misperceptions sometimes, because they distort not only our personal interactions, but can get to the point where they influence the behavior of entire nations. Attribution theory can go right up the social ladder and in part can explain why one country decides to take up arms against another. You can get that back. The root of these distortions and the hurt feelings and misunderstandings that result from them can be traced to three thinking errors or misattributions. First, we think we know what others intend, but we don't. We are always watching for signs that we believe will give us clues about the meaning behind other people's actions. Their motives for what they do carries a lot of weight with us as far as how we interpret and, in turn, react to their actions. Let me give you an example. You're standing in line at the theater. You know, you bought your ticket, you've been to the concession stand, you're waiting to go in, large popcorn in hand. And suddenly, someone behind you bumps into you. There goes your bag of popcorn flying all over the floor. Now, did they do it intentionally or accidentally? You likely would respond very differently depending on which one you thought it was, right? It makes a difference. And what happens if your assumption is wrong? Here's another example from real life. Very early in my, I guess you'd say, courting days with Dawn, she was living off campus when she first came to SUNY Cortland with her great aunt and uncle. And I had walked her home across campus, and I was headed back to my dorm. It was the mid-1980s, and apparently they didn't think that putting lights in the middle of campus was important back then, but it was dark, and I didn't have a flashlight. As I crossed campus, I came to the intersection of two walkways, and suddenly I felt my foot hit something. And a few seconds later, I heard the sound of breaking glass. Someone had left a bottle smack dab in the middle of that intersection. A short while later, I realized that someone else was walking in the dark about 40 feet behind me. I felt increasingly self-conscious. Did the person even notice? And if so, what must they think of me? Sure enough, as we got closer to the dorms and the much better lit streets, the person calls out to me, "Hey, you gotta clean up that glass you broke back there?" "No," I replied defensively. "Why not? Why did you break the glass?" he said with a tone of accusation in his voice. "Because I didn't see it," I pointedly replied. He didn't trouble me any further. He had walked through the same dark area as me, but up until our mildly tense exchange, he assumed that my intentions had been deliberate, when in fact they were purely accidental. Study after study has shown that people are really bad. This is a little depressing, but people are really bad at detecting lies or motives. The inner workings of other people are hidden from us. And this can make us uncomfortable. And for that reason, we tend to try to figure it out. We project our inner world onto them instead. In other words, since we don't know what's going on in their heads, we choose what we think is going on, and we act accordingly. And much more often than not, we overestimate our ability to understand the intentions of others. And science has shown that we often do so by a wide margin. Most of the time, we're reacting not to what people do, but rather what we believe they mean. Let me repeat that. We react not to what people do, but what we believe they mean. And this brings us to the second misattribution. We think that others know what we intend, but they don't. So just as we overestimate our ability to understand the intent of others, we also overestimate their ability to know what we intend and what we're thinking. Consider the following statements. "Of course she knows I love her. Can't she tell since I brought home takeout so she didn't have to cook? I'm so mad at him, I'm going to show him by not ironing his clothes for work. She knew I was just kidding around when I said something about how she looked in that dress. Right? We've already seen that we're no good at figuring out what others mean by their actions. But this dynamic becomes even more damaging in regards to ourselves. And the reason is because emotionally charged experiences are often perceived as threatening. Think about it. When you're kind of like even like a mildly tense or potential conflict with someone, you don't like it. You feel kind of like mentally like this, right? And we're social animals. Humans are social animals. We're afraid of being shunned, teased, or ignored. And because of those factors, when our feelings run high, so does our stress response. So, just in the way of example, this is why walking up to your boss, or you happen to bump into a celebrity or an authority figure like a police officer, or someone you've got a crush on if you're like a teenager, can feel like walking across a minefield. Strong emotions carry the threat of negative social consequences. You're not sure how that's going to turn out, and it puts you on edge. Will you be in trouble? Will you be embarrassed? And this fear of strong emotions, in turn, influences our behavior. And here's the funny thing, the stronger the feeling that we're experiencing, the more we tend to feel like everyone in the room can read what's going on in our heads. Okay, so the more oh my gosh, they're all watching me and they know exactly what's going on in here. And I'm embarrassed, I'm scared. We assume that the signs are everywhere, that the people around us can read our emotions, like we've got this big giant flashing neon sign. And because of this, we want to hide. We don't want people to read. So the more emotionally charged we are, the more we tend to downplay our outward displays of our intent when our emotions are running high. And this means that at the most critical moments, the times when our feelings run their strongest and tensions are high, and miscommunication would be most damaging, we actually decrease the amount of information we are sending out to those around us, which in turn only increases the likelihood that they will misinterpret our actions and intentions. So not only do we incorrectly determine another person's intentions, they also are not very good at interpreting ours, even though we're thinking they should be. And we get even worse at it as our emotions elevate. And this brings me to the last error in our thinking, and perhaps the most damaging. We attribute the actions of others to their character, but we attribute our own actions to context. In the theory I talked about earlier, it's called fundamental attribution error. And it works like this. When we do something we're not proud of, for example, cutting someone off in traffic, or snapping at a loved one, we tend to give ourselves a pass. We attribute it to external circumstances, outside factors, if you will. We tell ourselves, I know it's wrong to cut someone off, but I didn't see him. I was focused on the guy ahead of me. Or, I know it's wrong to scream at my kids, but you know what? I was exhausted, and it was a stressful day at work. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with this, because a lot of the time, we are responding to external circumstances. However, we often do not extend this consideration to others and their actions. When we see others act, we attribute their actions to a clear and deliberate intent. In other words, to an extension of who that person is. It's their character. It's who they are as a person. So you cut someone off in traffic, hey, I didn't mean to. Some other guy cuts you off in traffic, oh, it's because he's an inconsiderate jerk who shouldn't be on the road. Or, would you just look at that lady screaming at her kids? What a control freak. Those kids are going to need therapy. What kind of mother is she? And this error is particularly insidious because it can leave us feeling like we're in a world where we are never truly at fault, but other people almost always are. Their actions betray a deeper, perhaps even darker purpose, whereas ours are merely common sense reactions to an unjust world. And even worse, the three errors work in tandem, they work together. We think we know what others intend, but we don't. We think others know what we intend, but they don't. And we attribute the actions of others to their character while attributing our own actions to context. And all of us are doing this all the time. You don't even know you're doing it. The implications of that are unnerving because it means that we have little to no real idea of the motivations of the people around us. And that's an unsettling thought. We like to kind of have an idea that, yeah, we know what's going on. We tend to treat others almost like incomplete drawings. You know, you got kind of a partial picture. And so in our minds, we finish what we think the picture would look like, color it in, and we assume there. That's an accurate picture. But what we really have are imagined characters with pretend motivations. We build a worldview in accordance with our own fears, our own prejudices, our own traumas, and our own preconceived notions. And then we act accordingly, which can result in creating grief, tension, anger, suffering, and misunderstanding. Well, that's just great, Reverend. You're telling us that science says that more often than not, we are misperceiving the people around us. Yep, that's what I'm telling you. So what can we do about it? I can offer up spiritual and secular ideas to consider in answering that question. The Buddhist tradition teaches us that much of our pain and our suffering comes from not seeing things as they really are, but rather from getting attached to how we think they are or they should be. And that fits right in with attribution theory. The more detached we are from the truth, the more false assumptions we are likely to make, and the more likely we are to cause and or experience stress and suffering. In the Christian tradition, the focus is on forgiveness. Remember, turn the other cheek? In the 7th chapter of Matthew's Gospel, Jesus asks, "Why do you see the speck in your neighbor's eye, but do not notice the log in your own eye?" I remember the first time I heard that, I'm like, what? What is he talking about? But what he's getting at is, stop getting hung up on the little things that bother you about others while ignoring your own larger shortcomings. In more contemporary language, cut others some slack by recognizing that they have ups and downs in their lives just like you do. And of course, we can never go wrong with the golden rule. Easy to understand, not so easy to put into practice. And that is found across most of the world's religions. Treat others how you would want to be treated. Applied to what I was talking about earlier, if you don't want people to make incorrect assumptions about your behavior, don't make assumptions about theirs. If you don't want others to think of your negative behaviors as character defects, give them the same courtesy. And from a more secular perspective, one of my core beliefs is that we are the heroes and heroines of our own stories. We see our lives as a series of events with us as the central characters. How can we not? We're in our heads 24/7. The thing is that everyone else is the central character of their stories. With that in mind, just knowing that we are all prone to misperceiving the intentions and motives of others, because we don't know all of their stories, allows us to step back, take a mental breath, and try to be more understanding. Fancy word for that is metacognition, which simply means thinking about our thinking, or having an awareness of what's behind the thoughts in our heads. Will we be able to do this all the time? No, of course not. We each come at life through our own unique set of biases and lenses through which we view the world. But being open to the ideas of seeing things as they are and letting go of our assumptions, and that's hard. It feels like kind of walking through a room, with the lights dimmed. You're afraid of bumping into things. It makes you feel insecure. And realizing when we do those things that everyone else is trying to muddle their way through this life, just like we are, ultimately can make for a more peaceful and kind community. And if we all could adapt to that kind of thinking and try to live our lives that way, what a different world we would live in. Something to think about. Our closing hymn is number 213.
There's a oneness in your mercy, like the oneness of the sea. There's a kindness in your justice, which is more than liberty. But we make your love too narrow by false limits of our own, and we magnify your strictness with a zeal you will not own. For the love of God is broader than the measure of our lives, and the heart of the eternal is most wonderfully kind.
We close our service with the words of the actor Alan Alda. Remember Hawkeye Pierce? Alan Alda. He said, begin challenging your own assumptions. Your assumptions are your windows on the world. Scrub them off every once in a while, or the light won't come in. Please join me in the words. The flame is extinguished, but not our hope for the future, our courage in the face of crisis, or the love we share in all the world.
He was a religion which, like sunshine, goes everywhere. Its temple of space, its shrine, the good heart, its grace.